Hello and welcome to today's live chat, which is coming to you as always from inside my motorhome. Today is the 14th of October, Saturday the 14th of October, and that is a day.
HelloFresh.
And Hello Fresh. That was I've put the computer on so I can see people's questions more easily. Today is the 80th anniversary of the revolt in Sobibor. In fact, if anything, I should have actually done this live thing last night. To me, what was important in some ways was that I always used to go to Sobibor on the 14th of October. Now, as some of you may be aware, I actually lived with Toivi Blatt, Tom Blatt, who escaped from Sobibor on the 14th of October 1943, and he wrote a couple of books on the subject, In the Shadow of Sobibor and Sobibor, the Forgotten Revolt. In the Ashes of Sobibor, sorry, I should have said. The so from this point of view, this became something which I did on a regular basis. He also gave me information about the revolt, which I promised I wouldn't say until after he died, but I'm actually not going to say it today. I'll do that some other day when I would talk about what actually happened on that day. What I'd like to do today actually is like to talk about my visits to Sobibor and what it was like. Now, so I haven't been there now for 10 years. Absolutely the last time I went there, so 14th of October 2013. And the photograph which I've used from the avatar comes from that day. Now, I went with Tom, and he by this time he did have certain amounts of problems with depression, and he'd had that for a number of years. But on that day, there was everybody wanted to talk to him and to be with him. And that day, in fact, he also got he got an award for service to the Republic of Poland. In fact, there was three of the escapees got awards on that day. Two of them escaped on that day. The third one, he had been sent from Sobibor to another camp, which is highly unusual indeed. When I heard his story, I didn't believe it, but a friend of mine, Robert Kowalek, he said, no, there's no doubt that's precisely what happened, because he was able to back it up from other evidence. And so anyway, so the three of them, none of them are alive today. They're all gone. Indeed, if you can see on my website, I've got film from 2008. In April 2008, there was an organisation funded through the European Union, which paid for the Sobibor survivors to come to Poland to take part in. This was on the 15th of April 2008, so it was normally on the 19th of April was the anniversary of the uprising in Warsaw. The Warsaw Ghetto uprising, 65th anniversary of that. So I don't quite know why they actually did it then, but anyway, they did it on that date. And that was the uprising in the ghetto, the 19th of April 1943. The Warsaw uprising as such was the 1st of August 1944. So the totally separate events. And anyway, so I've got this, and it was Passover at this time. So I have film. I did a video in the restaurant of the people who escaped from Sobibor, who were still around. So then there was about 10 people, but I mean, they're all gone now. No one's alive. But there was also somebody from Ukraine, and he had, in fact, he was even older. He'd been than Tom. When this was done, he must have been late 80s anyway. When I did and so you can see I've got an interview with him with the translation from, I think I was speaking English, but you can also hear it in Russian. So it's in English and it's in English and in Russian, and so you can hear the two. So that's a long interview that I did. Yeah. So question was there some? I bet there was something today. I'm certain there would have been something today, and only thing is this: no one told me about it if there was, which is highly unusual, and I didn't actually see anything written about anything happening. Now, 10 years ago, there was a stack of people there. Now, it normally wasn't like that at all, because the first time I went on the anniversary, there was nobody there. Cloud Landsman actually put out a film up. I think it was called Sobibor, 14th of October 2001. I think that was what was called. Maybe it was 2002, but I think maybe it was 2001. I can't remember. In any case, I was there on that day and I didn't see Cloud Landsman, and there were so few people there that I'm certain I would have done. Now, anyway, to return to the 10 years ago, so I said to people there, oh, it's a pity that people didn't show this much interest in Tom and his daily life, because at one point were there, and I was sort of the minder, deciding who could speak to him and who couldn't, and that was really very, very curious for me to actually do that. I mean, the one of the very first times I went there. So I'll tell you the first time I went there. What happened was this was my first ever visit to Sobibor was on the 2nd of July 1999. See, I can remember these dates. Totally useless information I can remember. And I was living in the centre of Warsaw, and it was the early days of internet, and I sort of looked it up a bit, and I drove out there and stopping at a place to have breakfast. I can remember this place I stopped at, they gave me the butter, and it was like, the thing is, mine's not going to look so. Where's my butter? No, it's down there. I wanted to give a demonstration, although the demonstration won't be so good as they give me this butter it's still in the packet that was sort of melted. And you could see the people previous people had actually used it to spread toast on, because there was still a bit of toast on it, and anyway, but anyway, it was all very good. And anyway, then I drove there, and I spent some time there. I noticed the place was just about to close. The museum was open temporarily. Now, anyway, so somebody said something to me very politely, and hello, and but later, when I met the person who was in charge, I said, well, why didn't you come and speak to us? That was silly. I mean, you were here, you'd come all this way, you should have come in. And then I sort of had a really nice day driving down the Bug River, and then the next day I was in Helm as well. And next day I had this date with this lass who lived somewhere nearby, stayed in the hotel. Anyway, so that was the very first time I went there, and so then there was this it was a wooden shed with a museum, because that's effectively what it was. It was a shed, really. It was a big shed, but it was still a shed, and there was 4 rooms, which in all honesty wouldn't be much bigger than this vehicle I'm sitting in right now. Well, each room, that is. Well, I'm exaggerating a bit, but they weren't very big rooms, and they had photographs of the people who survived. They had their photographs from the revolt, because after the revolt the Nazi funerals were actually photographed, so these Nazis who were killed during the uprising. That was some. I think some of the photographs even appeared in the Nazi press. The funerals, and there was a bit of information about how it happened, and there was a maqueta, what's that in English? A model, and there was this model showing how people actually escaped from the direction they actually went, and all the rest. But the thing was, there's very little protection to the site, but the thing was, you could still find where the route of death had been, and there was even a tree that still had barbed wire on it. And anyway, so I knew which tree it was, and we used to point it out. One day the barbed wire wasn't there, but I looked below and the barbed wire was on the ground. And I said about the barbed wire. So what do you expect me to do with this old barbed wire? And then I showed it to a friend, Michael Tregenza, and he said, "Oh, finders keepers." Then I said, "No, no, no, I'll give it to you." So there, nobody wanted it. I had a stack of barbed wire that came from a camp which had been used for Soviet POWs in Helm. I rescued it. Then in the end, I ended up throwing it in the bin. I mean, what was I supposed to do with a pile of barbed wire? And so I'm not being a collector of things. There was somebody. Michael Tregenza wrote a book on Belzec, the death camp. He wrote a number of things as well. His book on Belzec, as far as I'm aware, has never actually been published. And yeah, as far as I'm aware, now I read it. Sorry, I read it in Word format as the correction. I thought it was really, really good, and I just don't know why it didn't actually get published. Yeah, so I'll give you a little bit of information about the breakout in this case, because I think this is the thing. What is shown in the film is largely accurate, not entirely accurate, but it's largely accurate. There were things that happened. There was because they took people as like Tom, and there was a couple of others who were taken on as advisors. But he said there was one thing they got wrong, and Tom said that day he said he was ill. I don't know if he'd been on the booze the previous night or something, but he said he was ill, and so he was unable to tell them because they did something which was wrong in the film. But I don't really think it made all that much difference. I mean, there were some daft things in it, like for example the Russian the commander, I've forgotten his name now. Pechesky, sorry, yes. And they dyed his hair blonde, so they thought that Russians had blonde hair, which was totally ridiculous. But anyway, not only that, I mean, blonde was. I think there's more people in Russia today, maybe there, but it is quite unusual to see blonde people in Russia. This is the film, the made-for-television film. You can see actually I've got videos of the making of the film, which I recorded from the television. I didn't record it, sorry, a friend recorded from the television in 1985. So but what they did was they lured. It was a plan. They lured the NCOs and the officers into places for fitting of boots they told them they found something for them, and they came to the warehouses, and they came at the same time, and then bang, they killed them there. And it was one only that refused to come up, and he actually survived. And but the others, they got nearly everybody like that. And now I did once say, well, I mean, it's very easy for me to say come up with my plans years later, but I said, well, why didn't you actually you know, I'm sure there was uniforms there, why didn't you just march everybody out the camp in uniform? And you know, in uniform, not if there wasn't uniforms everybody, but why didn't you just have a couple of people pretend that they're officers or something, German officers, and then just march them all out the camp? And well, yeah, but you know, it wasn't that easy, you know, and those things couldn't be done. What happened was there was one of the NCOs saw that he realized something was happening. Shots were fired, and so but by this time almost everybody had been killed. So this small group who'd done the killings, which largely Soviet POWs, plus a couple of 3 or 4 inmates, not many, and then Pechesky, he jumped onto a table, and he said along the way to when people are collected for roll call that the Nazis had been killed, and that now it was every person for themselves. And then they escaped. But like that, they rushed the fences. Unfortunately, it was this moment of panic which hadn't been planned, and the Travniki guards who were in the watchtowers, they had machine guns, and so they started firing. So there was a bit of shooting, no more than a bit of shooting. There was masses of dead people. And now Tom, he survived because what happened was he got onto the fence, but he got over it. But the weight of the people coming over it pushed him down onto the ground. But he was lucky in as much as those that went after him, they managed. They were killed in the minefields, but by the time he ran across the minefield, the mines had clearly all exploded. But he knew there was going to be an escape attempt, and he had a leather jacket, and he'd stuffed valuables and cash inside it. Now the thing is that valuables and cash were easily obtained because people, when they knew they were being deported, they took everything with them of value, and so when they were killed, these valuables were left lying around somewhere, and so the prisoners often got a hold of it and they were able to hide it. And often they used these valuables to buy things for themselves, such as food or what have you. And there's even case, for example, in Treblinka, where they managed even to get oranges from the guards. This is the Travniki guards. Anyway. So he was under this barbed wire fence. He ran off, leaving the leather coat and whatever cash was inside him, cash, valuables, whatever, diamonds, or whatever. I mean, I don't suppose I'm pretty certain of him as he was 16 years old. He wouldn't have known what a diamond. Well, I mean, I wouldn't know what a diamond is looks like today. Never mind. Never mind then. So. So that's largely how it happened. It happened in over a rather small space of time because the Soviet POWs came there at the end of September, so they'd only been there about 3 weeks, and they had been working in building part of the camp, which a part of the camp had been designed to store captured ammunition. And you can still see this part of the camp today. I mean, it's in the forest, but you've got these big, like bunker-like things, and so these concrete emplacements. I don't know. Sorry, I haven't been there for 10 years, so I don't know what it looks like now. But I suspect now it's all being exposed, so people can see it very easily. But then I've got video of me there when it's all it's covered. It's in the forest. Thing was with the there was times that I actually went there and there was the person in charge and he said, "Oh, we've just found a stack of barbed wire and other stuff there, and this camp was further out than we'd actually imagined it to be, because there aren't plans from the time or anything like that. It's not like it's Auschwitz or Majdanek or somewhere like that. They've got all the plans because the construction office had them, and these things actually survived. Whereas in Sobibór, there's nothing, and so it was largely a guess where the fences were and things of this nature. I was there during the archaeological digs, which took place in 2001, I think it was, 2002, something like that. And they found that the part where the bodies had been buried was not exactly the same place as what they previously thought. Thing is, though, in Sobibor, you can still, I'm using the present tense. When I was there last, there was still possible to find bones and things like this. Not as like in Belzec, bones were all over the place in Belzec, but I mean, milled bones. They're sort of ground up. They're quite small. Sometimes you found larger bones, but that was more, or even parts of skulls and things like that. But in Sobibor, they were there. It wasn't particularly difficult to actually find these things. And because Sobibor, with all the death camps there, they were initially, people were murdered, the victims were buried, and then their bodies were burnt. And it seems that this started happening around November of 1942. I have a theory, and I mean, I can't prove this, just a theory. I'm just offering this as a suggestion. Maybe I'm wrong. That this started happening because I believe that the Katyn massacre was found around September, October 1942. It wasn't actually announced until April of 1943, but I believe that it was known at this time, and there is things, even Goebbels writes of things that suggest it, without saying it directly, and they realized that because of this, that they had to start destroying the evidence, whereas the Soviets had failed to destroy the evidence of Katyn massacre. And so this and other massacres, which, I mean, there's other places like in Kharkiv and other places where they killed lots of Poles, and so at Katyn they failed to do it, and so therefore they realized that they had to start destroying the bodies. Now, in Helmno nad Nerem, for example, they started burning the bodies earlier. I think this was done because it was realized that this was probably far easier. And in Auschwitz, for example, in September of 1942, the commandant of Auschwitz, Hersey, went off to Helmno, and then he saw how the bodies were burnt there, and as a result of that, started burning. Because in Auschwitz, the problem was that as soon as you start digging down there, it's highly waterlogged. You can see even today they've got you've got this canal, Königsgraben, goes through the centre of Birkenau. As soon as you start digging there, then the water rises up. And they had pump there when it was a camp. It seems, ask yourself the question: well, why build a camp where in a place where it's constantly waterlogged? It doesn't make any sense. And I think the answer, Himmler's answer, would have been that, well, an SS officer always finds a way. So rather than build it somewhere more sensible, he put it there, and it had to be pumped out all the time. So there's clearly different reasons why the bodies were burnt in different places, at least if that my theory is correct. Or it could be that they just decided that they would burn the body. The thing is, I also have a video up on the destruction of the bodies at Barber Yar, for example, and there and other massacres. There was this Sonderkommando 1005 and Paul Blöbel, and they dug the bodies up and burnt them. Actually, I've just I wrote it some time ago, but I'm about to dictate a text on a place called Piaśnica Wielka, which is in Poland, where the massacres took place in September and October 1939, but the bodies weren't burnt until late 1944, and that was quite a small Sonderkommando, all of whom were murdered once that had been done. Yeah, I'm sorry. I was just sort of talking about. I wasn't meant to talk about what the times I actually went to Sobibór. There's one thing actually today being a Saturday, and I remember there was one Saturday I went there, and they had a marathon on, and I thought that was particularly good. I really appreciated that I thought they were doing a run from Sobibór to Włodawa, and I thought that was a really nice way of remembering the people there. There was another thing that happened on that. I think it was that day as well. I think it was a Saturday. There was somebody who came from Sweden, and his way of honouring the memory of the escapees was that he decided he was going to sleep out. He was going to sleep out to spend the night in the open in the camp. And anyway, so the forester got him there midnight or something. I was like, what are you doing here? He's trying to explain it, and I think the forester was so surprised he just let him stay there sleeping under the stars. Now yesterday was a fantastic weather here. It was absolutely outstanding, 28 degrees. I was walking out in short trousers just until I did the video. I came back for the video 5 minutes to wait, and then I was still in short trousers and t-shirt. The date of the Revolt, we were driving there one year, and we said how nice the weather was, and Tommy went into recollecting how the weather was on that day. He said it was very, very similar. Sun was shining, and it was one of these really nice autumn days. Now yesterday was a summer day here. Well, I'm in Germany now, not in Poland. No, in Poland it's much colder. I spoke to people over the phone today, but But one thing that must have been on the mind of the escapees is that winter was coming. Now, when the Treblinka escape took place, that took place in the height of summer, 2nd of August. And so there was a chance to get somewhere and to prepare for the winter. Whereas in Sobibor, this is now middle of October, and it's starting. I mean, it could get frosts can happen in October. So I mean, okay, in 1992 I was in Moscow, and it was well below freezing. A week later, okay, admittedly Moscow is much further east, but I use that as an example. So this was a part of the problem that they face. Now, some of those prisoners, those escapees, the Polish escapees, who came from somewhere in the area, they had a number of advantages. Is that one, they knew the area, and the next thing is they knew the language, and so that gave them more possibilities. The problem was that these people often didn't know anything about orienteering and how to actually walk from one place to another. I mean, there's plenty of people who walk around in circles today, but in Tom's case, what happened was after going through the forest, walking for 36 hours, they went to a house in the forest they found, and after the war he tried to find this person, and the lady there was in there, and she gave them all some food, and she gave them milk, and she wouldn't take anything in payment because they offered her a ring, and she refused to take it, and she said, you got out of Sobibor, that's where they're burning people. And they asked her how she knew. She said it's only about a kilometre from here. So they'd gone round and round and round in circles. There was a large group of people because they wanted to stick together. There were people who were really frightened, and the former Soviet POWs, they effectively deserted them. They took the weapons which they'd obtained from the dead Nazi staff, and then they went over the bug, and they joined up with partisan units, which they found, but they left this mass who were leaderless, and from this mass, this group of people, Tom, and there was 4 of them, and eventually then there was 3. And because Tom knew the area, he went back to his hometown where he knew people, Izbica, which wasn't all that far. It's about, what, 50-60 kilometers away, something like that. So it's like 2 days walking there. And initially they were hidden by a farmer who agreed to help him. His name was Boyarsky. He did it for money. Then Boyarsky tried to kill him. Kill all 3 of them. Boyarsky died in 1993 somewhere in Silesia, Silesia, and after that, but he did kill one of them, one of the 3, and the second one was later murdered. And Tom was on his own, but he managed to move around and survive the winter. And because the winter was really very tough. I mean, -20, difficult to get food, clothing also, not so, but people did help him, whom he already knew, and so he survived until the Soviets came. And then when the Soviets came, Boyarsky's men were looking for him, and so he left his pizza and he went to Lublin, and at Lublin he stayed in the Lublin area until the war ended. In fact, he told me this really good story about how they found out in Lublin about the attack on the 20th of July 1944, because by then obviously he's living in Lublin had been liberated, well, the Soviets had captured it, changed hands, I should say. And so how they found out about it, that the generals had turned on Hitler. Anyway, good. So that'll be for another time. So I'll just have a look at some of the questions, because I haven't actually, I've really been sort of reminiscing there. And today, actually, I thought rather than talk about the events, I thought I'd sort of reminisce on things and people I'd met and this type of thing. And right, John asks, was this the guy who ended up living in Vancouver, British Columbia? his wife, Dina. Tom married Dina in 1956 or 7. What Tom did was this. Sorry, the answer to the question is no, it's not the same person. But Dina, after they got divorced, she went to a place called Anna. Can't remember the name. It's in Washington State. It's very close to the Canadian border. It's on the sea, Anacapolis or something like that. It's a Spanish-sounding name, but it's in Washington State, very close. But it's not British Columbia. I don't know who that is who went to British Columbia. Anyway, good. Yeah. So I'm just trying to look into some of the questions. Thanks for saying. Yeah, I'm talking. I haven't seen the Russian film Sobibor, so I don't know. I don't know what's in it. I can't say. I've absolutely no. The best books, other than Tom's, obviously I'm biased, but there's a person called Richard Rasker, whom I know. Sorry, I know. I've not met him personally, but I do know Richard. And Richard interviewed Tom in the early 1980s, and he went to his place. So he had a business in Santa Barbara, and Richard Rasker's book on Sobibor it's really good as well. So Tom's writing from his memory. There is Philip Bialowicz's book on Sobibor. Philip was staying with me at the time and I had a really long conversation with him, but there's a lot of mistakes in it. And I questioned him directly on those mistakes. And he said, it's a long time ago. And I might have made, my memory might have been faulty. But there's one of the things that he put in it which was completely wrong. For example, in the summer of 1943, now Philip had a brother, and his brother had managed to, his brother went to Sobibor earlier, and he'd been saved because he was a chemist. He'd been a chemist in Izbica before the war, and so his brother somehow was able to rescue him when his transport came. He's on the same transport as Tom was, so his brother though escaped in the summer of 43. And Philip, though, had him being in the resistance movement in the camp and organising the escape, which is not true. I mean, that didn't happen anyway. I brought this one up with Philip. Anyway, Philip died a few years ago. Anyway, let me just say more of the questions. Anyway, yeah, Rutger Hauser says Maggie is was the actor who played. I can't remember. Name rings a bell. Anyway, right. Anyway, so I'm just looking here quickly. Okay, Robert says about Wagner. Wagner's a very curious character. Sergeant Wagner was effectively, he was the deputy commandant of the camp, but Wagner had been, he kept the prisoners on their toes, and he was constantly he would be constantly interfering. He was not somebody who could be put to sleep, so to speak. He'd been sent away. He'd gone away. He wasn't there on the day of the revolt, and Tom said it was that had saved his life. Anyway, so Robert says that he got on the rat line to Brazil, and he was killed there, even though his death was officially listed as a suicide. It's very curious because there is a Panorama interviewed Wagner in 1978. I've never seen it, and I've asked many people if they have a copy of it. I know plenty of people who have seen it, but he was found in Brazil. He was arrested, and he wasn't actually sent off, and then he committed suicide. Now, yeah, I do know a little bit about this actually. I might save that for another time. Or shall I tell you now? No, I'll tell you now. No, I think all the evidence actually. There was somebody who made believe that he'd actually killed him, but he didn't. And I think, I mean, it doesn't look like a suicide. It's illogical that somebody should commit suicide then. But the person who claimed, suggested that he might have killed him, didn't kill him. Put it that way. I don't know any more than that, actually. There you go. And right, movies free on the internet. Yeah, I could well, sorry, I had a copy of it somewhere. I don't know where it is now. Good evening. And John says there's a photo of a huge cloud of smoke rising above the camp. No, that photograph was taken of Treblinka on the 2nd of August 1943. That place was taken from a place called Kosovlatski. And here's one for you, which another anniversary coming up in a couple of months. No, next month, which is the assassination of JFK. Jack Ruby came from Kosovlatski and not from Sokolov Podlaski, as is mentioned in the Warren Commission. And so it's Jack Ruby was born in Chicago in 1915, and I think it was 1915. Have I got that right? Yeah, I think it was 1915. Anyway, we think it was 1915 because then Chicago didn't actually issue birth certificates until later. But anyway, so his parents came from there, and actually I tried tracing, looking for what the fate of his family. And so some of them actually seem to end up in Paris, but it was really, really, really poor family. Anyway, I often thought that because of Jack Ruby and his background, I wondered if that could have any effect on his killing of Lee Harvey Oswald. Anyway, sorry, that's just a little bit coming off the subject. I've been meaning to do a video on Jack Ruby for about 5 or 6 years. Anyway. So, yeah, Robert asks, okay, sorry, John also points out they had a mechanical bone grinder. No, the bone grinder, there wasn't a bone grinder in Sobibór. There wasn't one in Belzec. The bone grinders are used in commercial applications. I presume they still use them. I don't know. But they were used for example, when you've got an abattoir and you've got all these bones from the cow. Now, bones can be used for things, for making gelatin and all sorts. Indeed, if you want things very, very healthy, that I make is bone broth. I can buy bones. You boil them for a couple of hours, and then you drink it, and it's really very, very good, very tasty. And so anyway, so this bone grinder was at was at Belzec. So Robert asks, how did the survivors know where to go in the woods? And the answer is they didn't. That's quite clear. I notice with age, I could be dropped off anywhere and I could find my way. Now, as I get older, I'm sort of losing this ability. But it's clear that they didn't, and this was part of the reason why many of them were actually captured. The woods it is more difficult for most people actually to orientate themselves in the woods. In any case, because you don't see a horizon, and you can't necessarily see the sun or whatever, and you can't necessarily work out your position. But they had no maps, they had no compasses or anything like that. And I mean, the question would be, would they even know how to read a map? That's also a problem today, incidentally. I mean, I found this when I was in Ukraine. That talking to people who were there, and they couldn't read, soldiers, and they couldn't read a map. I mean, it was just beyond my understanding how anybody could even try and do something like not being able to read a map. But anyway, so then they had nothing. They had nothing like that. So anyway, and anyway, John says, yeah, they had journalists were flown to Katyn. Yeah, that's true. For example, there's an American one who actually he witnessed what was happening in Warsaw, because they had they could see, because the plane they landed in Warsaw Airport, and then they took them off to Smolensk from there, and he could see the smoke coming over the ghetto on I think it was the 19th or the 20th of April 1943. Anacortes, yes, Anacortes is the name of the place where Dina, Tom's wife, lived. She died this year. Today I was thinking I had to write to her sister to do it. So anyway, Tom ended up in Santa Barbara. Indeed he did, because I lived with him there. Rutger played Sasha Pechersky in the movie. Harmut Becker played Sergeant Wagner. Okay, sorry, I couldn't remember. And oh, the actors have died as well. I didn't know that. All right, okay. Well done, Maggie. Yeah. Oh, so John has seen the interview on Panorama, which I haven't seen. So there was a show on YouTube called The Goldsmith and the Nazi. Okay, right. So what there was now, one of the very first people who ended up in the camp was a goldsmith, and this was actually shown in Escape from Sobibor. But the thing is, with Escape from Sobibor, they didn't actually put it in the right order. So this person who came from where did he come from? Konskovola in Lublin district, and he ended up in Sobibor from April of 1942. So he'd been there an entire year by the time Tom ended up there, because in the film it sort of suggests it was otherwise, that Tom turned up later. But there was this goldsmith who actually recognized Wagner in Brazil, because they both ended up in the same place. All right, so Maggie says Harmut said that Shlomo approached him during the film to tell him that he'd been involved with Wagner's death. Well, I didn't know that that it happened, but Shlomo didn't do it. So he might. Sorry, so if you say he might have been involved in it, he may have been involved in it, but he didn't do it. Okay, put it that way. Anyway, the most horrific part of the movie is the event that was actually true when the officer comes into the woman's workroom and the secret baby is found, and he shoots both the woman and her child. Robert, I don't think that is true. I don't think that happened. But I'll say Maggie says it happened for real. Okay, it's 2 against 1 now. And yeah, John says if you can see the sun, it's relatively easy. And yeah, if you can see the sun, you can work out where you are and where you've got to go. So yeah, I thought about this a lot today. I mean, it was one of the things I decided that I just wasn't going to go to any more commemorations. Indeed, after when Tom died in October 2015, so it'll be his yard site as the anniversary of his death in next week, 2 weeks time, and 2 and a bit weeks time. And I thought that perhaps after this I stopped doing anything related to the Holocaust. I started really doing it again about 5-6 years later. And because I thought, well, that's it really. I sort of part of my stage of my life, which has actually stopped as well. The thing was this, is that in 25 years ago in the summer, what we'd do is we would go out in the Lublin district and we'd look for people, older people who could actually might have been eyewitnesses or seen things or anything like that, and that was then possible. There was no difficulties in doing so. But now you can't find people who can remember anything really. Okay, my mother can remember the bombing of London, but there won't be many who can being in the shelter, what it was like. But be very few people though now who are available. Another thing is actually it's not like easy to find people as well, because in those days lots of the work on the farms was done by hand, and so you'd have people even so I say 25 years ago there wasn't all these tractors and everything, so people still would be working in the fields. And so if somebody was born say in 1920, okay, then they would be approaching 80, but they'd have been adult during the war, and then therefore they could actually remember things. And I mean, there were things related to, for example, where camps were located. There was one thing. There was a transit camp in Izbica where Jan Karski was, and so we managed to locate where that was, and it was largely the peasants working in the fields. So yeah, there's a concrete post here, and there was a concrete post there, and she took us and showed us where they actually were. And anyway, now having said that, one thing it's much easier. So with documents, we've got access to documents, which is much easier. Lots of documents are online. I was doing a little bit of research today, for example, and I had from the Israeli National Library, and I managed to pull stuff up, and from there, which was really much easier. So John remembers JFK's assassination, and well, I don't. I wasn't old enough. And the first thing I can remember, I was just discussing this with somebody a couple of days ago, was the moon landing. That's the very first thing I can remember of any international thing. I can remember the 1970 World Cup. I can remember England playing Brazil. And despite my age, I can remember saying it wasn't a good game, and I can also remember England being beaten by West Germany in the quarter-final as well. Okay. Robert says the most ridiculous thing out of the movie are those religious fools praying in the midst of chaos, and whilst others are trying to escape. That did happen. I talked to a number of it, said they saw people actually doing that. One thing that Tom said that was very, very clear. Somebody said, what do we need all this for? We could have lived a few more weeks. And yeah, it does seem ridiculous. I mean, it seems totally ridiculous. But then again, we weren't in that situation. But there's another thing I would like people to remember is that in the camp, they had food. They had lodgings. They get out, although they could be murdered at any time. They get out, they can still be murdered at any time. But there's no food, no lodgings, and possibly more suffering. That is why people stayed. And as ridiculous as it may sound, those that broke out, lots of Polish Jews couldn't even speak Polish. If they did, they didn't know much of it. They were marked. They couldn't communicate. They didn't know if they could speak to a peasant. What would that peasant do? Would that peasant hand them over or not? They didn't know that. And lots of them have had experience of this type of thing previously. I mean, at the end, Tom escaped 3 times after being arrested, after being held, and he was handed back by locals, not by he wasn't by the SS or SD, or it wasn't the SD anyway. So the Feldgendarmerie. It was or Travniki men. It wasn't. It was locals that handed them over. It was locals who pointed them out. So this was the risk, and I think it might be illegal under Polish law now to actually say something like that. So it's a good job I'm not in Poland to actually say it. So this was the problem. So I mean, I can, in a way, I can understand it. So Robert was in a junior high school when JFK was killed. Robert, did you have anything to do with him getting killed? Because we do know, according to conspiracy theorists, that the only thing we know from the conspiracy is that Oswald is innocent. So that means everybody else is guilty. That was just a little joke. Okay, right. Well, thanks for watching, and tomorrow I'll do another one tomorrow, and I want to talk about the war in Gaza, I think, because I think I put this into some historical connection, because this, talk today about the revolt in Sobibór, but the two things is they are linked, and very much linked. Anyway, I'll do it tomorrow. So, yeah, sorry I can't notify John. I'll put it up. I'm going to do it, but yeah, it's up to YouTube to tell people. Yesterday, by the way, I made a mistake. That wasn't YouTube's fault. It was my mistake. I put up the time of the video at 9:15 and not at 8 o'clock, but I wasn't thinking properly. So that's why the video yesterday was later than usual. Yeah, so the most important event in the history of the world was Armstrong landing on the moon with Aldrin when Robert was 19 at university, and I'll do it. Look, I'll do it 2000 hours my time, which is which is it's now 2100 hours here nearly, and so I'll do it 20. So it's the same time as the day. I'll do it then, and yeah. Yeah, the first I was thinking. No, I know what I was saying about because it was the Yom Kippur was the first thing I said. Something was Yom Kippur War was the first thing I could remember politically. Then somebody said no, it was the moon landing. Ah, no, I remember the moon landing as well. I remember on the front cover of the Daily Mirror. So yeah, but Yom Kippur I can remember seeing it on the Yom Kippur War, the October War. I can remember seeing it on the television, and I remember seeing an Israeli tank on the Golan Heights. That was 50 years ago now. The Yom Kippur War, interesting enough, it's possibly the war. No, sorry, the Falklands War is the war I know best. But it was the second best war because when I was in the army in the early 80s, and this was the war that you studied because it was the most recent one, and so a lot of the conclusions about what a third world war would be was based on what the Yom Kippur War was like, and so I mean there was some really there were major innovations because of the Yom Kippur War, but I think possibly we came to the wrong conclusions. Anyway, never mind. That's another subject for another time. Thanks for watching. Thanks for being here. It's been a very pleasant evening, actually, to talk. I mean, it's a horrible subject, of course, but I mean, at the same time, it did bring back memories of people I knew and people who, unfortunately, are no longer here. But at least, I mean, when I think of them, and even though I'm thinking of pretty nasty things, it's pleasant to think of them as they were, so we didn't just talk about nasty things, we sometimes talked about nice things as well. Thank you. All the best. Bye for now. Bye.